everyone, and welcome to the Wright Perspective. Today, we are going to recap a 1987 fantasy comedy film, The Princess Bride. It was directed and co-produced by Rob Reiner and starred Cary Elwes, Robin Wright, Mandy Patinkin, Chris Sarandon, Wallace Shawn, André the Giant, and Christopher Guest. While the film cannot really be considered a blockbuster hit with a budget of $16 million and a box office of $30.9 million, it is definitely considered a cult classic. The film is number 50 on the list of Bravo's 100 funniest movies, and it's number 88 on AFI's list of the 100 greatest film love stories. And, you know, for some, these accolades will be enough to consider this movie a classic. But today, we will determine whether it is a classic from the Wright Perspective. We'll do a recap, we'll discuss the movie, and then we'll take a vote using a voting symbol picked especially for this discussion. But we start with intros. Kick us off, bro.
Hi, my name is Aubrey Wright. I'm the oldest.
I'm Genia Wright. I'm the middle.
Hi, I'm Brittany Wright, and I am the youngest.
Extra for no reason today.
For absolutely no reason.
I'm ponytail in.
No, that's okay. All right, well,
Okay, that's a good
there you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
We'll take it. We'll take it. We'll allow it. We'll allow it. Y'all, coming up with voting symbols for this was actually...
Oh, that's right.
It was fun. It was fun. And I have two to recommend, y'all. Okay. And normally when I am making these recommendations for voting symbols, sometimes I'm not super confident that you guys are going to love them, believe it or not. But this time, I think I have two winners. And I think you're going to love these ideas so much that we're just not even going to know which one to pick.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. All right.
Let's hit
it. My first recommendation is the Pirate Dread Roberts. Okay. Because he is a concept, right? He's not really a person. He's a concept. And people believe he is real. And because people believe he is real, he is. Meanwhile, we find out that he is really just a persona. He, quotes, is really just a persona that's being passed around. It's really an analogy for faith, believing in something without even having evidence of it. He's really just a name that people fear. And that concept of faith is something that is so present in this film. Wesley only gets Buttercup to fall in love with him because he kind of hangs around believing that eventually his love will be returned. He actually sets out to travel, believing that he'll find his fortune. Fezzik and Indigo Montoya, they believe that they can bring Wesley back to life. And so it happens. Buttercup believes that Wesley will save her. And so he does. And so faith plays such an important part in this movie. So that's my first recommendation. The second recommendation for a voting symbol is the miracle pill. Okay. And this is the pill that brings Wesley back to life when he has been murdered by the prince. Okay. The pill that coming back to life, you know what it actually reminded me of? Sometimes when I am in just a funk, I will call Brittany and be like, Brittany, I cannot find my life force. Can you please help me find it? And we just chit chat until the rains pass, And so I started thinking about that miracle pill. It really symbolizes love and friendship. It's the thing that can bring you back to life when you feel like you are mostly dead, as they call it in the film. And so this film is about love. It is about friendship. And so my second recommendation for a voting symbol is the miracle pill.
Yes.
Well, those were very Genia suggestions, I will say.
Two winners.
They're so good. They are so good.
Did you come up with any, bro?
Of course. I have also, there were a lot of things that could be used.
It's
true. But the thing is that there was so much of it that had its own little part, but it wasn't like the overall movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking, anyway, so what I came up with was the mask, the mask of the Dread Power Roberts, and the Also, but my favorite one is a sword. Because that was the one element that was throughout the whole the entire movie. Because from the very beginning, when you had Wesley chasing the kidnappers, just through all the sword fights, through the buildup of the story of what Indigo Montoya, and even at the end when Wesley stared down the prince, it was with his sword. So that was the one thing I was like, well, this is in every aspect. And it's not a sword, but of course the knife when Buttercup was talking about killing herself.
Yes.
So those are my two, but I really like the sword.
Nice.
And Britt, what did you come up with just now?
Literally, I said to myself, as soon as Janiyah was like voting symbols, I was like, oh yeah, we have those. I literally said in my brain, mask or sword.
Oh.
That was it. And then I started trying to be creative. I was like, oh, an electric chair. Oh, a tree.
You was getting real Janiyah with it.
I was
but
like,
listen, I like the fact. I like the fact that we let Janiyah ideas get through from time to time. I do. This one. This is a simple movie. I think we should because it's going to be one of the things I'll talk about.
I think that honestly, when you think about what we all just said, we all said the same thing. Janiyah gave him a name, the Montoya. What is his name again?
No, but she actually wants to use Dread Power Roberts.
Yeah.
Brittany messing up the characters already. Lord God, we didn't even get started yet.
So she said the person, and we said the mask that's on the person. It's the same thing. We got to go with that.
I can get with the mask.
Let's do the mask. All right, let's do it. All right.
I like it. The mask of the Dread Pirate.
What's his name? Fred.
Dread Pirate Robert.
Y'all are just the worst.
Pete.
That was a major plot point.
What's his name again?
Dread Pirate Roberts.
Okay,
also known as the Man in Black. Okay. All right. So if the Princess Bride gets 3 masks at the end of this podcast, then it will be a classic from the Wright perspective. Let's hop in. And we're now about to do a recap. And for any of our new listeners or viewers, if you haven't picked it up already, spoilers abound. Okay. So we really do a really in-depth recap because you know what? Sometimes people haven't seen this content in 20 years, or they haven't seen it at all, but they want to enjoy the podcast. So we do a real recap of the movie. Here we go. So the Princess Bride opens with a grandfather who's played by Peter Falk, telling a story to his grandson, Fred Savage, who is sick in bed with like a cold or a flu. It's nothing like major, like life-threatening. And he's reading from a really old book. And he tells the grandson that the story has been passed down for generations, And in that opening scene where he's like telling the grandson about the book and the story he's about to tell, he does deliver one of my favorite lines in the whole movie. When I was your age, television was called books. Anyway, so the grandfather and the grandson, they are not really, super, super important to the movie, except that the grandfather ends up narrating the whole movie. And the story he is telling is called The Princess Bride. And again, in reading the story to the grandson, he actually narrates the movie. So the story takes place in a mythical kingdom called Florian, and it centers around a beautiful farm girl named Buttercup that has been chosen to marry the Prince of Florian named Prince Humperdinck. Humperdinck, okay? She didn't really want to marry him, but she was going along with it because her true love, a young man named Wesley that she used to work with on the farm, he had been killed by a well-known and greatly feared pirate named the Dread Pirate Roberts. And just a few days before this wedding, she is actually kidnapped by a group of outlaws. And and it's three of them. And the mastermind of this entire kidnapping plan is Vizzini, who's played by Wallace Shawn. And he kidnaps her with the plan of framing a neighboring kingdom, the kingdom of Gilder. Okay, he wants to frame them for the kidnapping in the hopes of starting a war between the two kingdoms. He has two people that he's hired to help him implement his plan. The first is a giant named Fezzik. He's played by André the Giant. And he actually turns out to be a very complicated man. You know, he isn't just brawn, okay? He has a heart of gold, and he values kindness and fairness over anything nefarious. And somehow he tries to bring those values into his work as a villain. Okay. And then the second hired hand is an expert swordsman named Indigo Montoya, played by Mandy Patinkin. And he actually only has one purpose in his life, and that is to kill the six-fingered man that killed his father when he was a child. Everything else he does, including kidnapping, is just to fill the time until he can find that six-fingered man and kill him. Mm-hmm. So this trio, they capture Buttercup. And by the way, listen, she doesn't just let herself be captured. Okay, she puts up a valiant fight. All right, let the record show. Okay, and so they kidnap her, and they're selling away, thinking they have gotten away with the kidnapping, but no, they didn't. For some reason, the infamous Dread Pirate Roberts, he is like the man. He wears all black, and he wears a black mask, and so they call him sometimes the Man in Black. He is hot on their tails, okay? But why would he be coming to get them? It's probably to get the princess to hold her for ransom. But guess what? They don't know why he's coming, and they don't want to find out, okay? So they are just putting a plan in place to get away from him, okay? Or take him down, okay? One or the other, but they're trying to get away. And so they end up splitting up to try to take him down. The first line of defense is Indigo Montoya, who really is an awesome swordsman. Unfortunately, Dread Pirate Roberts is better, okay? He doesn't kill Indigo, but he does knock him out. Next is Fezzik, who tries to use his size and strength to take out the pirate, but Dread Pirate Roberts ultimately uses his size against him and knocks him out. Again, doesn't kill him, knocks him out. Finally, the pirate catches up with Vizzini, who has Buttercup with him all tied up. And he's a really small, weak man, and he tries to fight the pirate with his wits. And of course, he loses. Dread Pirate Roberts tricks Vizzini into drinking poison. And unlike the swordsman and the giant, Vizzini is now dead, okay? At this point, it's just Buttercup and the pirate. And she is still not about to go down easy, by the way, okay? And she says to the pirate, she says, listen, the prince is a master tracker, okay? And he is surely looking for me. You are about to get got. I'm paraphrasing, all right? And she's right. The prince is hot on the trail, and he does catch them. But by then it's too late, because it turns out that behind that black mask, the Dread Pirate Roberts is actually Wesley, the farm boy that is her one true love. Now, he had assumed the role of Dread Pirate Roberts after his reluctant mentor, the last Dread Pirate Roberts, went into retirement. So if Buttercup and Wesley can get away, Buttercup won't have to marry the prince after all, and she'll get to be with the love of her life. And so they run, and they are surviving all kinds of obstacles in the forest as they're trying to get away. But eventually the prince does catch them, and Wesley is about to get got. But Buttercup saves his life by agreeing to marry the prince. And the prince says, okay, I'm going to marry you, Buttercup, and I will let Wesley go. Now, of course, the prince was lying, okay? He has Wesley tortured and killed anyway, okay? And believe it or not, the prince doesn't even love Buttercup. And in fact, he plans to murder her right after the wedding. And it turns out that he is the one that hired Vizzini to begin with, to kidnap and kill Buttercup and blame it on the kingdom of Gilder, okay, as a pretense to start a war so he could take over their kingdom. All right. And so it also turns out that one of the prince's henchmen,
men in imagination land.
not even, where they at, yo? Well, they're coming. So Stay tuned. They're coming. So it also turns out that one of the prince's henchmen, Count Tyrone, and I love that his name is Tyrone. Count Tyrone is the six-finger man that Indigo Montoya has been looking for his entire life. Fezzik and Indigo find this out, and they are ready to go and get him, but they need help getting into the castle, okay? And they need a strategist like who? The man in black, the Dread Pirate Roberts, AKA Wesley. And so they go and try to rescue him in the castle because they want to ask for his help to take down the six-finger man. But by the time they get there, Wesley's already dead. So naturally, they took his body to a magician named Miracle Max, played by Billy Crystal, to be brought back to life. Miracle Max gives them a pill that does begin to slowly bring Wesley back to life. His wits are back before his motor skills. And so the trio concocts a plan that enables them to get into the castle, and Indigo gets to avenge his father's death by killing that six-fingered man. But it's too late to stop the wedding. Just moments before they arrive, Buttercup and Prince Humperdinck's marriage ceremony had taken place, and Buttercup thinks Wesley is dead. Buttercup, once again, she is so distraught. Okay, she is about to kill herself, and she tells everybody, I'm about to kill myself. Okay, but then she finds Wesley in her bed, in her chambers, and she is happy for like 5 seconds when the prince comes in behind her. Wesley, who is laying in the bed because he has not yet fully regained his motor skills, he essentially punks the prince into backing down from fighting him, allowing Wesley, Buttercup, Indigo, and Fezzik to get away. Okay. And Wesley names Indigo the new Dread Pirate Roberts, and he and Buttercup live happily ever after on the spoils from his time as the Dread Pirate Roberts. The end.
Great job.
Y'all, listen, the
Great
characters. Thank you. Thank you. So much fun. And y'all, the characters in this movie, oh my gosh, they are so silly. They are just silly. Their language, their character profiles, silly. I have to ask y'all, did y'all have a favorite character in the movie?
I mean, there's no question.
I know you're going to say. I knew it.
There's no question.
I knew
There's no question.
What makes him your favorite, bro?
I mean, I love his arrogance. I love everything about the characters are so understated, but pop. It just pops so good. Like when in the beginning of the movie, you're talking about the man in black is chasing these three kidnappers, and at one point he's about to catch up, and so Vincini tells him, "Go kill him." He's like, "Should I use my left hand or my right?" He's like, "What?" He was like, if I use my right hand, I'll kill him too quickly. So I'll use my left hand. This way I'll enjoy it more. He had no idea about this dude. And just the banter between the two of them when they're fighting. And it's just like, you are wonderful. I worked hard to be so. They're like complimenting as they're fighting to the death, and they were just perfect in that. And through the whole show, he was funny. Through the whole movie, he was funny. And even at the end, his climax was just one thing I love about this movie. You had several different climaxes. And one of the climaxes was when he got to beat this guy he's been wanting to fight. And he had his whole line set up. My name is Indigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die.
Oh.
And when he finally got to say it, and and there was a point he almost lost the fight.
Yeah.
And then you could just see his
resolve. It comes back.
That resolve is just coming through.
The eye of the
tiger.
And
then at the end, he was like, promise me money, promise me power. All I have and more. He was like, I want my father back, you son of a bitch. And killed him. Man, that's just one of the all-time best
so good
raps of art. So that's why he's my favorite.
Yeah. Yeah. What about you, sis? And I have a guess for you as well.
We didn't just got started. Hey,
What? No favorite character?
Well, you know what, I do think Brittany should kick us off in the sense of the real. Well, first of all, tell us your favorite. But after that, Brittany should set us off because this is Brittany's first time.
That's right.
So me and Janiyah are colored by
we watched it as young
when
people.
You grow up with something.
Yes.
And I'm just interested to hear a take, a 2021 take, a fresh take. So, but who was your favorite, Janiyah?
Well, I gotta say, I had a couple of favorite characters, and they were like the characters that were not the main characters. Like I loved Billy Crystal's characters as Miracle Max, and his wife was played by Carol Kane. Oh my God. It was just like, how did you manage to like
MLT, a mutton, lettuce, and tomato?
And you just have to wonder how, like, I feel like some of his lines had to be improv because they were just so Billy Crystal and they were so silly, And I also, one other character I have to give an honorable mention to also was the head bad guy played by Wallace Shawn, Vizzini. He kept his line.
Nailed it.
His line repeatedly was inconceivable.
That was another one. Indigo Montoya hit him. He was like, "You keep saying this word. I don't think it means what you think it means."
Because he kept saying it, and then whatever was inconceivable, that to him
actually
would happen in like 1 second. And so it was just like his way of delivering that line, inconceivable.
Oh, he nailed it.
It was just so
he
good.
Nailed it.
So those are the two that
I might not have a favorite character. I have a favorite part.
Oh, what's your favorite part?
Give it to him.
I just like that part when he was coming back to life and they were like trying to figure out a plan. They were looking at all the people sitting outside the door of the castle, and his body was not working all the way. And I do remember genuinely laughing, like, what? This is so silly.
When André the Giant was just dragging him around.
He nailed that dialogue. I don't know if it's dialogue, but he nailed his part too. Because when he woke up, he was like, "Who are you? I'll take you one at a time. I'll take you both."
It's like, but your arms are not working.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to be able to do that.
Everybody
That is inconceivable.
Yeah. Everybody in this movie was very, very confident.
Very confident.
Like, I mean, because you want to talk about favorite parts when Vizzini was talking through his genius. When he was talking through, because he challenged the Man in Black to a battle of wits, which was basically Man in Black poisoned one of the chalices of wine. And it was like, you choose, we'll both. Yeah, I know. But the contest was, I'm gonna choose one, and I'm gonna poison one, and you gotta choose. So like that was the and like he was like, all I have to do is figure out, are you the type of man who put the poison in front or the poison in front of me? And his whole, like, that had to be ad-libbed.
Oh,
His whole just going through his thought process, why he was picking the wine. And then at the end, when he switched the chalices, when he wasn't looking, but it was like, why? He was going to drink from whichever one you told him to drink from.
Right.
But, you had to switch just for that last
just one more again. Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah, that was a good part, sis. Good part.
Oh, man. And then the other thing I love about that part, Brett, is when he was asking, okay, what are our assets? What are our liabilities? He said, asset, basically, we have no assets. He was like, if only we had a wheelbarrow, and they had one. He was like, why didn't you tell me that in the first place?
Yeah.
Oh, that was a good part.
Yeah.
But Brett, how did you feel though? So like, this is one of those movies that is a classic, it has a cult following.
serious cult following. And in fact,
so like for me,
the movie started making money after VCRs, like after people could rent it. That's when it started making money, when people could buy it on VHS. So like,
and it makes sense. Yeah, it was an original, went viral after it was out of the theaters type situation.
That's right.
So it has a cult following. So you're coming with a certain amount of expectations, but what did you think overall in watching it? And we were just about to start talking about this before the podcast started, and I cut it off because I wanted to hear it live and direct.
Yeah.
I did enjoy it, but I do not feel the way the two of you feel right now. Like y'all are so happy, and I'm like, I'm sitting here processing in my mind. Like, I feel so bad. I really don't remember much of what happened in this.
Well, hey, but look, that's
like, oh my, when Janai was talking, I was like, oh yeah, I remember that.
Well, that's the job of the movie, though.
Oh no, like,
that's the job of the movie, is to make you remember.
But
it's not the other way around.
It's not.
The movie's supposed to make you remember.
I still remember enjoying some parts that were funny. I definitely could see how a movie this silly, people would still remember it and enjoy it and things like that. You know, movies that are making fun of itself. And how just to watch actors and actresses not take themselves seriously, that they're just having a good time in the movie. So I can see that, but you all saying that it is a cult classic, I literally what?
Mm-hmm. So you were thinking that while you were watching it, like,
yeah, I was thinking like, I'm like, yeah, this is a nice movie. I'm enjoying it. I'm like,
well, like, what did you think? What did you think of the story, sis? Like the actual storyline of, the prince trying, getting the girl, and then, Wesley eventually coming back through this series of circumstances to get her back. What did you think of the story?
Well, I knew as soon as I saw the what is his name? Pirate Fred. As soon as I saw him,
Dread Pirate Roberts.
Thank you. I knew. I was like, oh, that's Wesley.
Well, everybody knew that. That's one of the tongue-in-cheek parts of the.
Or all he has on is a mask. Otherwise, he's literally exactly the same.
He's not changing his voice.
Right. So I'm like, oh, okay. Oh, that's Wesley. I was like, oh, that's cute. But I think I was kind of laughing at the prince, just how dumb yet confident, and just I was like, what is happening here? Why? And it's like, oh yes, they were right here just a moment ago. And I was just like, this is so.
It was an epic battle.
So silly.
Both masters.
Exactly. It's like, so I think that I think that those actors and actresses were probably something special during that time. And as we talked a bit, that some of them have still done things that are present day. But just during that time, right. So just during that time, how they were, really important. So they could do something like this. But yeah, I liked it. I enjoyed it, but I just don't see myself feeling like, oh my goodness, this is a movie that is going to stand the test of times. While I was watching it, I was, but like, again, as I'm sitting here listening to you guys, I'm like, what? I thought it was
I think it's just one of those things, like.
See, I feel like I've thought about it too. I was like, this was in the movie theater. This feels like.
I mean,
you know how they do
André the Giant, Billy Crystal,
right. These are big names, but the way that it felt was like, how they're like, ABC presents.
It felt made for TV.
This type of thing, like a made for TV type of movie. And you're like all around, like, oh man, this is something special. We can't wait to watch it.
That really looks like a set.
It's only coming on television, so we're all the whole family's around the TV to watch it. Oh yay, André the Giant. And it's like I'm watching this like this was at a box office. Listen, it's none of my business.
I remember watching. I don't remember watching it in the theater. I was too young, obviously, when it came out in the theater.
Yeah, I don't think we saw it in the theater.
But I just remember, it coming on television, one of those things that came on television all the time, and so I watched it on television. And I honestly did not remember a lot of the specifics. So, sis, when you're talking about the movie, the details aren't staying with you even just a couple of weeks later. I didn't remember the details, but I remembered how I felt watching it, and I remembered it being a fun movie. And I remembered it having. I remembered some of the lines from it. So I remember Inconceivable. I remember him delivering that line. But I just naming that to say that
I just think he's funny. He's a funny.
So funny.
I like
so funny. I didn't have the kind of like when we were watching Sister Act, for example, I have that movie basically memorized. So it's a different kind of nostalgia. For this, it was just kind of like I had a general memory of enjoying it. So in many ways, like I felt like I was watching it, for the first time, because I was getting into the details, and I did laugh out loud. I didn't. There were lots of parts where I was just smiling, like, who wrote this silliness? And then there were other times where I actually found myself laughing out loud. And part of it was just like, you'd have these moments of drama in the story, and then they come right back to the silliness. There was a part where Mandy Patinkin's character, and Indigo, he is calling upon the spirit of his dead father to help lead him into the next part of the journey. And he's like holding his sword out and calling to his father's spirit. And there's so much heart in his delivery in that scene that you're pulled away from the comedy for a minute, and you're into the drama and emotion of that moment. And then 2 beats later, something dumb has happened again and you're laughing. And so I really did have like the kind of laughter that comes from being surprised in a delightful way. I do
remember kind of chuckling because I was laughing like, oh, this is the first electric chair. And so it just made me
the torture chamber.
It was so funny, just like it was taking such a long time to torture him because it was like all this water had to come, the wheel had to spin, and I was just kind of laughing like, this is horrible. You're waiting forever for this thing to happen. But I thought that was pretty funny how they were like, how would they create electricity to get that done to him during this time, this machine? So I just felt like they were sitting at the desk like, we have to make this machine do this and all the levels and all of this and all of that. So I thought that was really creative, how they had that.
I have a question specifically for you, bro, about André the Giant. Were you into like WWF and
Everybody
stuff? Was. Okay. So
everybody was.
Were you a fan of André the Giant before watching this? And like, did you watch it as an André the Giant fan?
Listen,
back in the day?
I had to Google him. That was a big man.
Oh, he was.
What was he like?
7'4", 520 pounds.
That was a big man.
You should see. You should look up what he used to eat. It was crazy. But
because isn't Shaq is what 7'6"? Shaq is something big too. Now I was just like, what part of the planet did y'all originate? Because this is some.
I mean, because back then it was. You liked all of them. My favorite was the Ultimate Warrior. That was my favorite wrestler. But you liked all of them. You know what I mean? Because they had toys. And one of Uncle Norman took me to Alive, the WWF, at the Civic Arena. Is that what it used to be called?
Yeah, Civic Arena.
Civic Arena, yeah. It was one of my best memories from childhood. But I think that is, the casting is one of the reasons, because I love this movie from the nostalgia standpoint, but I believe, and I don't know, but I believe if I saw this, let's say it was on Netflix, and I just clicked it because I was bored one day, I think I would have enjoyed it. and right from the beginning. And the reason why is because now you spoke on something, and I looked up the Cary Elwes, if that's how you pronounce it, who played Wesley.
Elwes.
He was in Elwes.
I actually looked up the pronunciation because I wasn't sure.
Elwes, okay. Mm-hmm. He was in Saw. He's been in, I think he was on SVU. He's played serious characters.
Yeah.
Mandy Patinkin was on one of my favorite shows, Criminal Minds. Robin Wright is obviously one of the leads on House of Cards. But the point I'm trying to make is this was a silly movie with heavy hitting actors. So they can make that transition from, a heartfelt speech to something silly 2 seconds later. And even if they hadn't blossomed into everything they are now, I think just that raw talent was there. Also, having the strategically placed cameos, you know what I mean? Just like you can't really call André the Giant a cameo because he was there throughout the whole movie. But like just seeing André the Giant in this, but he was good in it.
He was
and
good.
You know how like usually you see actors, athletes trying to act. You're like, oh my gosh, like
don't do Kazam like that.
I ain't mentioned no names of nobody, but when you see him act, it's like, but he did good.
He did definitely did.
In his role, like I felt like that's how a giant would be acting, and
y'all, it was really interesting. I did do a little bit of reading specifically because I couldn't really remember André the Giant well. Like I remember him as a character, from our childhood, but I couldn't remember who he was. And then it was like, oh, he was a WWF, guy. And y'all, it turns out that he had back surgery right before they filmed this. So he couldn't actually lift anything heavy. And he had to be really careful with his movements. And they actually used a body double that was a foot shorter than him for a lot of the scenes that required him to be physical. And so like, there's this scene where, Wesley is like jumping on his back. That they used a body double,
And the only time it's obvious is at the end when they jump on the horses. That was a pretty.
They weren't even trying.
Double.
They weren't even trying at that point. They couldn't have been. Like I think it was part of the mocking.
Yeah, it was just like whatever.
Because they threw each other out the window. And, it's like a doll floating down.
I was so confused.
They were being silly.
But when they're riding away, and when you see who's supposed to be the giant on his horse, like he's trying to make it so bigger, it's like that's clearly not. And I'm sure they didn't have a horse for him. I went horseback riding once, and we went, and they went and got everybody their horses. And when it was my turn, he was like, hold on. And he went back and put out this big horse that looked like he was in the back lifting weights. Like, we got to bring him out. And so I know if they brought out the big horse for me, I know that they probably didn't need it.
Yeah, there was no horse for him.
I would say, first of all, don't be bringing no Clydesdale out for me.
It was so funny.
Don't do me like that. Don't.
Well, bro, when you were talking about like André the Giant did a good job, one of the little known facts that I discovered is that Reiner actually recorded all of Fezzik's dialogue so André the Giant could learn his lines phonetically. And so they did a lot of work to get his delivery beyond what you're talking about, bro. That kind of I'm an athlete now trying to act kind of thing. They had to do a lot of work to get him there. I know. I thought that was so interesting. But it also just speaks to the work that André the Giant put in to prepare for the role.
Is he not from
English wasn't his
United
first language.
States?
He's not. He's not. I think, is he Russian? I can't remember now, but no, he's definitely.
But he was one of the main, because like one of the biggest moments in WWF history was when
French. He was born in France.
Okay.
When I think it was I think he actually threw him out the ring. It was André the Giant and Hulk Hogan. And because nobody had ever slammed Andre the Giant because it was so big. And I think he threw him out the ring. I can't remember the end part, but I think he threw him out the ring. I might be getting mixed up because Rocky threw Hulk Hogan out the ring in one of his movies. So, but anyway, he at least picked him up. And then when you saw Hulk Hogan picking up Andre the Giant, it was just a huge moment. So I'm just saying,
had to be.
So I'm just saying, he was a main, because even to be wrestling with Hulk Hogan, it was like, Hulk Hogan was the deal back then.
Yeah.
This was long before drama.
And Andre the Giant, so it turns out that Arnold Schwarzenegger was originally cast in that part. But by the time they actually got to production, Arnold Schwarzenegger's career had already taken off. And he can no longer do it. But bro, when you're talking about the WWF characters and Andre the Giant being a part of all of that, Arnold Schwarzenegger, I'm sure he would have brought a lot to the movie. But I just think as a kid watching your WWF hero be in the movie, that would have had to be released, because Arnold Schwarzenegger wasn't any of that, right? He was just an actor. Not just, but he was never.
I thought he was like a bodybuilder.
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
But was he like a wrestler, like The Rock?
No, Brittany's right. He was a bodybuilder.
Okay.
But Arnold Schwarzenegger was.
Yeah, they couldn't afford him. They couldn't afford him by the time.
But I'm saying, I would have been equally as excited because Arnold Schwarzenegger's Conan the Barbarian. So
and it's funny because
Conan the Barbarian again. I remember the sentiment. I don't remember it specifically, but I remember that.
And that's how I feel about Xena the Warrior Princess. I would Xena the Warrior Princess. I would watch that again because I just remember loving her. Now I
that was a good show.
Know anything about what the root of Xena is? It was probably comics and stuff like that. Who knows? I don't know. But I knew I loved that show. Yeah. And I think Arnold Schwarzenegger, I like him because and I don't know if he's always been like this, but it just seems like he doesn't take himself seriously. Until he was the governor of California, but that's but before that, he just seemed like he is silly. And that's just his character. That's his type of person. I know I'm this giant person from Austria. I am and I'm not taking myself seriously.
That's so interesting. But what's interesting, even though what you're saying is right, because he did Kindergarten Cop. Twins,
you know
what I'm saying? But
that DVD.
Which are both, great.
Jingle all the way. Good way.
It's not a too much.
We used to watch Twins.
These are movies that are in the culture as well. But I don't think he would have did better in that part than Andre the Giant. Because he's big, but he's not Andre the Giant is a giant. And his features are like a giant.
That's right.
Arnold Schwarzenegger just looks like a dude who lifts and who's genetically perfect, according to him. And just so you know, if you ever want to kill a couple of hours and enjoy yourself, watch Pumping Iron.
It's a movie.
It's a documentary.
Oh, it's a documentary.
Taking place back when he was competing with Lou Ferrigno and all, the guy who played the Hulk and all this. And they cannot stand him because Arnold his brain would just put his thoughts in your brain. He would just say it all the time. I'm genetically perfect. He was just but he was saying with so much. And everybody else who was just as good at lifting weights, but he said, he was when they need something, it's they come to me for advices. it's like I'm the father and they're the child.
That's so
Anyway,
rude.
I'm just telling you.
That's so
It's
rude.
so horrible, but he's
You
not
have to
joking.
He's
You
really
have to if you ever want to enjoy a couple of hours, just watch. But what I'm trying to make is his brand of how he is, I don't think would have fit. I think
you needed André the Giant.
you needed André the Giant. And everything from we talk about music and like how I like how the sets weren't too good.
They were not.
That. I like how they were consistent. They were all high school cafeteria consistent. And it allowed you to just be like, these people are just having a good time.
They're just having a good time.
I love the music.
I just thought of a favorite character.
Give it to her.
I'm
so excited.
What do you got?
The old man, as him and the princess were walking down, the new queen was walking down the hallway, and she's like, gives him a kiss. He's like, I'm about to kill myself. This is my last time seeing you. He's like, she gave me a kiss.
Yes.
Sir, you're focused on the wrong thing.
He didn't know.
God.
He didn't hear her.
Oh my God, that's a good one.
He was deaf. And I was like,
and again,
think
about how subtle that was.
Yes.
He didn't overdo it.
So quick.
It was just perfect. And you made me think of her getting married. And even that part. Marriage. Marriage. When we come together.
That actor, Peter Cook as the clergyman. Oh my gosh. He was hilarious. You almost just want to interview him. Like, what was your motivation? Who told, were you channeling somebody you knew from your life? Right. It was so funny.
It puts me in the mind of Frank from just this random accent. Like, what is happening?
We don't need / speech impediment. Like, we don't need it. What are you doing?
I always thought it would be funny if they did a Zoom. You know, when we were in lockdown, they would do those Zooms. The actors were doing Zooms. Yeah. I think it would have been funny to see Balky Bartakamus for Perfect Strangers, the guy from Father of the Bride, Frank.
Martin Short.
The guy who did the Melweds, him, and the one from that new show, Up Schitt's Creek. The mom from Home and Home. What was her name?
What is it?
I love that Zoom call.
Up Schitt's Creek. Huh?
I love that Zoom call.
Her name is Catherine O'Hara.
Yes, Catherine O'Hara. So it would be so funny seeing them doing a Zoom call with their accents.
That would be like all fake, unrecognizable accents.
Yes, all just
iconic characters.
It would be hilarious. But yeah, I just want to say my 3 bullets.
Do it, bro.
Why I love this movie. First of all, it's the music, because the music, when there are certain feelings I will never get again as an adult. The feeling of waking up Saturday morning early and getting some cereal and, pouring the milk and sitting down. And when that sound came on from your cartoon, it was just such a great feeling. And I'm just saying, the songs of storybook, the song gives me a little reminiscent of that feeling. And the beginning of Family Guy always gives me a little bit of that feeling, because they still have a song that you can sing along to or whatever. And that's how songs used to be,
Yeah.
Gummy bears, bouncing here and there and everywhere. Just all these. So I love that. I think the music just set everything up perfectly. I love the casting, which I thought was flawless. And you had good actors who not only, whenever you watch a corny movie, you don't usually get a fight scene that is on the level of The Man in Black versus
Listen,
Indigo Montoya.
they trained for months. They trained for
And
months,
you can see
and they
it.
were not body doubles. It was actually the two of them doing
That's
those
what.
scenes.
It is so good. Like even
It's
now, like
they're so well
it's so
done.
good. I was watching this on YouTube, one of these things. It was the top 10 sword fights in cinematic history. And that made the list.
I believe that.
That made the list. And,
Yep.
and they're not fighters. That's not what they do in any other movie. But it's just, you could tell that even though this movie was silly, the actors took it so seriously.
Yes, they did.
And so
and bro, before you move on from the casting, I have an interesting casting point. So the director, Rob Reiner, he auditioned over 500 women for the role of Buttercup. And y'all are not going to believe some of these names. Courtney Cox, who we know as Monica, from Friends. Meg Ryan, hello, you've got Mel. Uma Thurman. And guess who else? Whoopi Goldberg.
That actually would have took me out of it.
Any of these would have made this movie funny, but in a different way. The only one on that list that puts a question mark in my mind.
Can I guess?
Please.
Meg Ryan?
Ryan. Yeah. To me, I like Meg Ryan, and we've actually had a chance to see her kind of like with Billy Crystal, so we know that she can do that kind of humor that they were using in this kind of like, I have a straight face, but I'm really being silly right now. We know she can do that, but I couldn't see her in this role. But again, I also don't know her when she was like a teen, like a really young, sprite.
But see, the thing is that I would have said that same thing about Robin Wright, because if I would have been introduced to Robin Wright through House of Cards, and then
found out she was cast as Buttercup, you'd have been like,
I had to look it up because I'm watching House of Cards, which I was really into at one point. I'm like, where do I know her from?
Right.
And I looked it up.
Yeah.
It was almost those things that you got to click in a couple times, like, for real? It's like, oh yeah, that was her.
Yeah, yeah.
But and lastly, I just love
the fact that they named her Buttercup.
Yeah, what is that about?
It's like, is that your real name? Where is your mama? I never saw her parents. I said, what is going on here? Why is your name Buttercup?
It was like they just went down the list of all the flowers. And they were like, no, not Rose. That's too common. And then they went with the silliest possible flower name. I just thought it was such a silly and therefore perfect choice.
The fact that, you got Buttercup and you got Tyrone. That the naming was also part of it. Like all of these names were just
totally.
And I mean, the last, which brings me, I'm just saying the plot. I love, right now, everything is so serious. Like I'm watching Americans right now, which is one of the most serious shows I watch. Everything is serious. Everything has a message. It has and this was just in a time where you just had a fun movie. The plot was simple. There's a kidnapped victim. You got somebody who's saving
her. And the
her.
message was just love conquers all. That's
the
whole message.
It was a happy ending. Everybody made it to the end. You're okay with it. You know what I mean? And just the and even how you saw Fred Savage, who also I think did a good job of acting the way a little boy would act. Because that's how you act when, at least when I was a little boy, you want to act like you don't want them to. Is there kissing? But in the back of your mind, you really like it.
But y'all, can I tell you, I actually think I did not need that whole little beginning. I didn't need the grandfather and the grandson. I think they could have just sliced that right off and went right into the movie in some way, into the story. So I actually didn't need that. I mean,
but I didn't think it hurt the movie.
Well, I was
see what you're saying.
When I was trying to justify it in my mind, I'm like, maybe that guy who was playing the grandfather was a big deal and that was an important cameo. And it turns out that Peter Falk, who played the grandpa, he is Columbo. And that was like a really, famous detective show. Like he was a detective in the LAPD, and it was an NBC show that ran for a good minute. And so I think it might have been a bit of a coup to have him in this movie.
Yeah.
But honestly, that whole little opening, I just didn't think you needed it. You know.
No, I can see that, but I didn't think it hurt.
I don't know. You didn't need a narrator even, kind of. So,
but I feel like those types of movies that are like in imagination land, you always have a narrator.
It never felt off to me.
Yeah. And I did think it was cute that it was a story, because I liked having how there were some parts where they had the characters did it over again.
Yeah.
Because, the grandson was interrupting.
Right. Yes, that was good.
They did integrate it well.
That was another
good
little subtle thing.
Yeah, they integrated it well. And I learned a term for that, y'all. I did not know this term, but it was in preparing for this podcast. There is
breaking the fourth wall.
No, I know that one. It's metafiction. And it's a form of fiction which emphasizes its own constructedness in a way that continually reminds the audience to be aware they are reading or viewing a fictional work. And so the grandfather and the grandson, they were a mechanism to kind of put us in that metafiction kind of, construct. And metafiction is frequently used.
Reading a book.
It's a form of parody.
That's probably why the sets could be like they were.
Totally.
So maybe it was necessary, sis, because if not, then you would have wanted the sets to be better.
Maybe so.
You know what I mean? But like, since you just reading a book, it's like, whatever, just reading
You're
a book.
creating these sets in your brain.
Totally. It's almost like when we did the Never Ending Story, and part of how we justified the crappiness of the puppets and the makeup and the scenery was that it was a little boy's imagination.
Right.
Do you remember that? Like, it was like, okay, your idea of a luck dragon is a dog with a lizard body. And it's because that's probably what a little boy might have imagined. And so as you're talking, you're right. You're right. I feel better about the grandpa now that we've had this conversation. But the whole time I was like, I don't need this chit chat with this grandfather and grandson. I didn't need it.
Well, that's you in real life, so.
So true. I am happy you talked about the music though, because when you think about this kind of movie, I wouldn't have expected the music to play as much of a part as it did. And it did. It was really.
It sets the mood. It just puts you in that. Y'all, and I'm just telling you, I just really not remember the music. I just really enjoyed.
Maybe it was
everything
so
is
good.
So serious now. Everything is so serious. Everything we talk about, it's just like we got pandemics and world financial crisis. Everything is just heavy.
Listen,
everything is heavy. It was just
even the idea.
Eight people just passed away at that concert. It's so much going on. I turned on the news and I was like,
I'm just saying it was nice.
Even the name, the impetus for the name of it. So the book, it was actually a book by a man named William Goldman, and he adapted into a screenplay for the movie. And before he wrote The Princess Bride, he asked his two daughters what he should write about. And one said a princess and the other said a bride. And the title was born from that. So bro, just to your point of it just being light, just from that very initial moment of
watch the movie again.
I know the idea coming together. It was light. It was never ever heavy.
I'm surprised Janai doesn't have anything to say about that.
About what?
The little girl saying, "Ooh, princess and a bride."
That being can be a CEO and a doctor, maybe? Huh? Why not a warrior?
Yeah, I do feel bad for those girls, but I'm happy you named it, because they're obviously not focused appropriately in their childhoods. But I will say, like, the character of Buttercup. Listen, she was. I just liked her so much. I mean, Buttercup.
She was fierce.
She was fierce. She was getting kidnapped and was talking smack the whole time. Okay,
and was going to check out.
Yeah, she was like, listen, if
Give me liberty or
so
give me
my man
death.
is dead. I don't have no reason to live. I'm killing myself. You're not gonna have me up here in this marriage. I don't want to
Oh,
be in.
that was another
That's
well acted
He
scene.
was fierce.
That was another well acted scene. I died that day. Like she nailed that. That was real life. That was good acting. Like in the midst of this, yeah.
And that was
it's just interesting because I hadn't thought about that until you brought it up. Like,
And bro, when you just reminded me, how could I forget this, y'all? This very interesting factoid. Mandy Patinkin, y'all, his father had just died of cancer a few years before the filming. And so he actually says, like, when he was playing this character for him, it was therapeutic because he got to just somehow fight and kill that thing that had taken his father out. And so for him, it was therapeutic. Just even that line he got to say over and over again. It felt like for him, you know, he was able to pour his personal experience into that character. You know, you killed my father, prepare to die. And he was able to.
That's why he did so well.
Yeah, totally. So those moments where these actors went deep into that dramatic emotion, you know, in some cases they were pulling from their own experiences, but they did some heavy hitter acting, which is why I'm surprised the movie didn't win a bunch of awards. Like I was expecting it to have had more. It didn't do well enough. I was expecting it to have more like notoriety at its time, and it didn't. It didn't. It's been as a cult classic that has stayed alive.
I'll tell you what, I would definitely go to a Princess Bride like thing where you had to dress up. I would do it.
Comic-Con.
We could host it. Oh man, the Wright Perspective does events. Yes.
This is the problem. You have to be people in podcast land, you have to be very careful talking about ideas in front of my sister. If you don't want those ideas to come to fruition, you better not say it. You better not say it, because she's going to pull it down out the ethos.
Oh, it's funny because it's true. Yeah, it is. Bro,
but like, if they did a movie, like, you know how they'll do movies
like Rocky Horror Picture Show. Oh, yeah. Bro, that actually would be fun. But Brittany, you were just making this point. There's no Black people in there. There's none. Like,
but it's okay. Like, but I think
because of the setting.
Well, the setting, but also just because I think that we're just used to it. Like when we're not there, when we're not represented, we don't even bat an eye. We're just like, oh, no Black.
Well, they were mocking something. And it went to, you know, it was like it needed to be a caricature of that. I'm
gonna tell you, for me, I am actually okay in a situation where there's no Black people, if it makes sense. Mm-hmm. And I prefer it rather than having something forced in. If I have to have the choice between those two, I'd rather just, because
the
other way, when somebody just forces it in, that I'm like, okay.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, bro. I don't know what you just said that made me remember this. But do you remember when Buttercup was having that nightmare and there was a lady booing her?
Oh yeah.
That actress's name was Marjorie Mason. And guess what her character was called? The Ancient Booer. See, this is how much they were just making fun. But when that scene happened, when she was booing Buttercup, I was like, oh, this is a precursor to that scene where Cersei in Game of Thrones was getting booed and the people were throwing poop at her and stuff. Did y'all think of that Game of Thrones scene at all when that lady was booing Buttercup?
I can see why it would make you think of it, but I just want you to know that the Game of Thrones Walk of Shame had nothing to do with Buttercup's dream. I just want you to know that.
About
and
somebody
I don't need
getting
to get
booed,
on Google.
Getting booed real good.
Listen, I don't know. That was a different level of booing that happened in Cersei.
Once we're super famous and you're interviewing George R.R. Martin, I want you to remember this question. And I want you to say, while you're very serious and, you know, the set looks like the actor studio.
Sure.
And you're saying, Listen,
Yeah,
in the
let's talk
scene,
about
in
your
the walk of
influences.
shame
Let's talk about your influence.
with Cersei,
Yeah,
was the inspiration of Princess Bride.
with the ancient Boer.
And they get real serious. Just wait for it.
She'll be like, I'm so happy you brought that up.
He.
Because most people don't,
He. The
Who?
scene Aubrey was saying George R.R. Martin.
Well, no, I said, I'm sorry. Oh, he'll say, I'm so, who? Oh, is that the director? Because, honey, I thought y'all were talking about the actress this whole time.
Finish your thought, though, sis. She.
It's time to vote.
It's time to vote. Take us to the vote, bro. Take us to the vote. Take us to the vote.
Oh, this whole time I thought y'all were talking about Cersei's room.
Oh boy.
That's so funny.
Yeah, evening podcast recordings, not our strength. Okay, tiredness,
Or just, this is me in general. I never know these things. This is not blame. We're not. Let's call it
Don't
thing
blame
a
the
thing.
clock. Yeah.
I never know.
I
never know.
Can you all still hear me?
Yeah.
All right. I had a little technical difficulty on my side. So
it's all right.
Well, take us to the vote, bro. Take us to the vote.
Right. Well, I mean,
take us to the vote. Take us to the
Princess Bride gets my mask. And that I will wear. Because if I went to this showing where we dress up, I would definitely dress up as Wesley.
Mm-hmm.
Would you be upset if someone thought you were Zorro?
Nobody would think I was at Zero at the Princess Bride event.
Yeah. All right.
Sis, you remember Zorro?
Yeah. The Catherine Zeta-Jones version.
Okay.
Yeah, Zorro's pretty big.
Yeah.
Oh, so yes, he gets my mask.
This movie does get my mask. And I'm going to tell you though, y'all, it was shaky there. Because one of the things we always talk about, like in the criteria for whether we would deem it a classic, is whether you would, whether it would stand the test of time. And I got to tell you, somebody who had not seen this movie before, turning it on, and that whole little scene opening with the grandfather and the grandson, I just don't think you would keep watching, So I think like you all helped me to get beyond that today, though, in our conversation. And so, I would give this movie my mask for the very great portrayals, the way that these actors were able to be caricatures, but also have a ton of heart in their delivery, and the way that we were able to find out so much backstory for so many characters. And then there were other characters where we never got their full backstory, but we still were very emotionally attached. Like, we don't know why Buttercup was a farm girl. Like, we don't have any sense of her back. Where were her parents at? We don't have any of that, but they gave us enough of depth of emotion from her that we were in it. So between the strong portrayals, the really humorous writing, and what is surely some great improv by the actors, I definitely would give this movie my mask.
Nice.
Sis?
Yeah, this was kind of hard only because I love my siblings and I want to support them.
Keep it real. Keep it real.
Keep it 100.
Keep
it 100.
I thought to myself, I was like, I could see one of them babysitting one of my offspring and showing them this movie, because I would not, because I wouldn't remember it after the day I watched it. So with that being said, it doesn't get my mask.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But you know what, Britt?
So bad.
I would like that,
Comic-Con, though.
But here's the thing. I believe that Brittany's vote is the most heavy in this situation because she's the one watching it with fresh eyes.
Fresh,
you know what I mean?
Eyes.
So like,
yep.
There's no way I'll be able to separate myself from. I don't know how many times I've seen this movie. Yeah. I'm not saying I could quote it, but I can write down definitely all plot points and do a lot of quoting.
Yeah.
I think that's something that makes things a classic. When you have an emotional connection to it.
Sure.
You know,
but it's also when other people can.
Well,
and that's the thing.
And that's why I feel bad, because I'm like, I'm sure there are tons of people that are like, what? Throw tomatoes at her.
Well, there you have it, folks. The Princess Bride is not a classic from the Wright Perspective. Thank you for going on this journey with us. Okay, we learned some new terms today. Okay,
we did.
Kind of learning.
We went on
metafiction.
Totally. Love doing this one. This was a good pick, bro. Good pick.
I forgot I suggested it, but great.
Oh yeah.
All right.
Yeah. I was about to say, because you did like our last couple movies, so yeah.
Well, I'm picking the next one, y'all.
Well,
I haven't picked it yet, but it's coming.
I can't remember my reasoning. I'll remember it.
I know what it was.
What was it?
I remember it was because we watched Grease. In Grease, Aubrey, you were like, is Grease mocking itself, or is it actually not top notch? And then we were calling out Princess Bride as an example of a movie.
You're both nuts.
That was actually being silly.
Okay.
And no, Grease was not being silly. They did cast 50-year-olds to play teenagers.
Which don't we always say that you kids think you're grown?
Oh yeah. Well,
why not get some grown kids?
And can I point out something? Brittany, the thing I have to deal with, of course, I supported Brittany in not liking Princess of the Bride, but of course, when we don't like Grease, we're crazy. I just want to point that out.
Here's the thing about facts. That's it. Here's the thing about facts.
We're my sisters, and we gotta wrap up, but my sisters both do this thing from time to time when they realize we're outside of logic and they just don't care. This happens often.
Yeah.
But like there's a time they'll be like, yeah, but all right.
Yeah.
and you can't argue past that.
And there's another man that did that, and his name was William Goldman. And he wrote a little something called The Princess Bride. Okay. All right. That's it for the show.
Where's the mic? Drop it. Where's the mic? Drop it.
Drop it. Serve all that. Thanks for joining us, everyone. This has been The Wright Perspective. We'll see you next time. Bye.
See you next time. Bye.